Alright, welcome to the second lesson in the experimental design unit. This is AFDA 7.2, how to choose the right sampling method. So, we're not going to talk about systematic inconvenience just yet. Remember, this is non-random sampling, that's bad sampling for now. We're focused on the random sampling, which is simple random, stratified, and cluster. Alright, so simple random samples have some advantages and disadvantages. The first one is that it is good for small populations. Alright, I'm going to abbreviate population as POP. Alright? It is bad for large populations. So there's a little bit of a trade-off here. You should only be simple random sampling if you have a small enough population to reliably simple random sample. Alright. It is also easy to set up and perform. And each participant has an equal chance of selection. This is good, because it means everybody can potentially have an equal say here. Now, the bad side of this is you would need a list of everyone. So the list of participants unfortunately may not be available. For example, the school may not be willing to provide students with a list of every student in the school. That's not something that they can really give out necessarily. You might be able to get a list of certain students, but you can't necessarily get a list of every student in the school. Alright, stratified random sample. Remember, stratified random sample involves subgroups. Actually, I'm going to draw a picture here. So remember, simple random sample takes random people from across the population. Stratified random sample divides it into groups and takes a simple random sample from everyone, or from every group. So the subgroups can be equally represented. Okay, that's a good plus of stratified. The downside is that it is bad for large populations. I'm going to use a new word here actually, a large spread out populations. So the reason why I put spread out here is because spread out refers to something called variance. Now, we're not going to mathematically talk about variance for a while. We might not actually get to variance this year. But spread out means that there's a lot more variance between the participants, or the members of the population. Okay. It's also easy to compare the subgroups. Which is good. But in order to divide the population into subgroups, information must be gathered beforehand. The last one is cluster sample. Remember, that's when we take groups of people that are near each other and we sample everyone within them. Okay, so this is good for large populations. And it's cost and time efficient, meaning it saves time and it saves money. It's also easy to show what are called grouped variations. We're not going to talk about group variations for a while, but I do want to put it here so that we can refer back to it later, if we get to it. The downside about cluster sampling is something that I alluded to last video. It is not as random, because you're surveying everyone within a group, and that's not as random as, say, a stratified random sample where you pick a random number of people from each group. Also, in a cluster sample, usually the sample size is smaller. And this is a double-edged sword. It could be good, it could not be as good, but as a general rule, when the sample size is bigger, you get a more precise result. So the sample size being smaller isn't great when you're looking for precision. So list the research goals is the first thing that you have to do in order to... Okay, I'm jumping ahead here. Hang on a second. The first thing we have to talk about was the advantages and disadvantages. But now with that information, we can decide which sampling method is the best to use given a specific scenario, which is what we're going to do on the back. In order to do that, we have to identify a few things. The first is the goals, and we have some keywords here. Accuracy, precision, cost, and there's one that's not on here, which is time. But time usually is not a factor. In observational studies, we usually have quite a bit of time. Classify the population is the next one. And again, we have some keywords. They are large, small, spread out, or close. Where it says etc., we're not going to be using more words than this. Now we have to identify the context. So this is who/what is being surveyed, and where is the survey taking place. And from there, we choose the method that best does the job of achieving the goals. Okay. Now, the way that I do this is I list the ways that an SRS, stratified, and cluster sample could be taken, and then I choose which one was the best. So I'm going to leave that off for now, and then we're going to I'm going to do another video later in the day today where I go through the back.